Welcome to Who Runs This Park, Park Enthusiast segment, where we expand our universe and knowledge of experiences in the outdoors and at national parks through conversations with highly regarded and respected individuals in the outdoor world. As always, Who Runs This Park aims to be a catalyst for inspiration, exploration, and appreciation of our world's natural beauty. Today we have Tim Beissinger and Renee Miller, known online as the Thruhikers. Tim and Renee, who met in college, have been adventure buddies ever since. They don't do anything lightly, and I'm beyond impressed with their drive and ability to execute. From marathons, Ironmans, through hiking the PCT, among many other trails, trail running, the list is extensive. Not to mention they recently published a book, Thruhikers, A Guide to Life on the Trail. They're quite the duo, and we'll get to dive into their extensive adventure experience, their TikTok and Instagram careers, their expertise dehydrating meals and preparing for long excursions, and even their love for engineering and how they have balanced long adventures with pursuing careers. We have a lot to get into, so let's dive in. Tim and Renee, welcome to Who Runs This Park, Park Enthusiast Edition.
Thank you.
Yeah, really excited to be on. Thanks a lot.
Of course. What is a crazy experience you have had outdoors? And I'm particularly excited to ask the two of you this just because I know you've spent so much time doing already crazy things in the outdoors.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, beyond crazy, just fun. It's so
Yeah.
fun to be out for a long time. I guess a crazy experience, just to pull one that comes to the top of my head, was in the Olympic of Mountains in Northwest Washington. We were in just a little over our heads as we were hiking the Pacific Northwest Circuit, and I slipped in the snow and slid 15 feet down the mountain. And fortunately, there was a nice tree to catch my fall and
Oh my God.
crashed into the tree. I was okay, but a little bit injured. And, I was okay, lightly injured, banged up. And we decided, yeah, we're in over our heads on this one with the gear we have. Let's turn around and go to safety for a little while.
Yeah, that's good. Probably smart. Did you guys not, in that moment, did you not have crampons and that was probably why you fell, or did you fall with micro spikes?
Micro spikes, not crampons.
Okay.
And it was just really steep traversing of the side of a steep hill and miles of it. And in that situation with micro spikes only, you need to be focused 100% of the time. Every
Mm-hmm.
footstep needs to be dug out right in order to support you. And I think I just lost focus. And
Yeah,
I'm glad we
which
turned
is
around.
understandable.
Yeah.
Yes, crampons and an ice axe probably would have been a smarter equipment to have on that.
But you learned, so that's what's important.
Yes, we're always learning.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have, this on the other flip side of this podcast, I interview the national park superintendent. So you guys have experience inside and outside national parks, but I do like to dig into people's national park experiences. And you just mentioned Olympics, but do you have, and again, it doesn't have to be the most memorable because I'm sure so many experiences can come to mind, but do you have any memorable experiences in a national park particularly that come to your mind?
Yeah, I think the first time we visited Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Park, just kind of the beauty and the remoteness and just blew us away. They are mostly wilderness, which is different compared to other national parks. And yeah, just no roads for miles. Like we walked in on the PCT in those parks and there was like 20 days between a road. Like they're amazing.
20 days between a road. And you're doing,
A lot of miles per
like a
day.
marathon a day, pretty much, if
Yeah,
even more.
I think on that stretch, we weren't doing a marathon a day. We were maybe doing 18 miles a day. That was our first
Oh,
through hike, so we were not.
only 18.
But yeah, and also not everybody does that. It depends on how often you go down to resupply, and we made a resupply
Oh, yeah.
strategy that involved sort of having our food sent up to us at these really tiny places, Vermilion Valley Resort, and those that we didn't have to cross a road. It was crazy.
That's really cool. One kind of quick caveat is Sequoia and Kings Canyon was the first episode I released with that superintendent. And I was interviewing Clay, the superintendent, and he kind of offhandedly mentioned that the trees had been around for hundreds of generations, and I honestly thought he misspoke. I was like, there's no way that the trees are that old. And then he said something again where he was like, yeah, they're 3,000 years old. And I was like, oh, what? Like, I would have guessed truly like 300 years old. And so hearing that they were that, and I've never been to Sequoia and Kings Canyon, I haven't been amongst those trees yet, but it shocked me, and I think everyone listening could tell. I was like, oh my God.
Well, we can one up him. We're about to finish a trip right now that took us across Death Valley, and there are bristlecone pines, which can be 5,000 years old. So
Really?
yeah, they're the oldest creatures in the world, depending on how you define the age of a creature. But
Right.
anyway, the
Yeah.
5,000 years, one tree. We don't know how old the ones we were looking at were, but we took pictures and imagined that they were the 5,000-year-old
Yeah.
ones.
The I'm glad you brought that up because I had seen on Instagram and I was curious if y'all were still on that trek of going from the lowest point to the highest point in the US, right?
Yes, in the
Okay.
continental US.
Not in the world.
Not in the world.
Not in the world, not in
That
the
would be
US. Alaska gets higher.
sorry, yeah, lower 48.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We learned a lesson from that slipping down the mountain experience I described that we didn't want to repeat here. So right when we were starting this trip, Mount Whitney, the tallest point in the lower 48, got a bunch of snow. And so we
Mm.
decided, oh, we'll just make it the lowest to high-ish trip instead of lowest to highest. And we planned to go up Whitney until it got dangerous. So we did that a couple days ago, which would have been the end, but it never quite got dangerous. And instead of deciding to turn around due to safety, we decided to turn around due to food. We were expecting that it would be unsafe and we'd have to turn around. So we came down and we really want to see if we can make it higher, maybe to the top.
Heck
So
yeah.
we'll see. We're getting
Yep.
some crampons, we're getting ice axes, and we're just going to see how it goes.
The I did some backcountry skiing for the first time 2 years ago, and the person I was with said, "When were you getting after it, and when were you getting away with it?" And I really love that framing of, like, being smart and taking into account the risk is so important, and, yeah, I'm glad you guys made the decision, take into account, like, "Hey, we actually don't have enough fuel to do this safely," and being willing to, not get summit fever or whatever you have and take your, like, health and wellness into account.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. That is definitely more important than making it to a summit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's so many different things you guys have done, as I mentioned in the intro, but I'd love to kind of jump back and understand where this all started. So, you both have quite an active history. What got you into these longer term or more physically demanding activities?
Yeah, so I think I kind of grew up doing sports, swim team and track, and Tim was more into Boy Scouts and backpacking, and so we kind of just combined those two hobbies and started doing really long backpacking trips.
Yeah, and it was years of figuring that out. Renee saying, "Let's start running," and me saying, which we did. We liked that. It was just like that was what Renee was suggesting, and I was suggesting let's go camping, and she was enjoying that. And then when we found long distance hiking, it was like, oh, this is both. This is pretty extreme athletics and pretty extreme wilderness. So
Yeah, it's a good combination of the 2 for sure. Was the PCT your first long through hike, I guess?
it depends on your definition. We think of it as yes, as that was our first big through hike. But a few years before that we did the JMT. So
Okay.
so kind of.
I think as someone I wanna do the JMT first and then who knows what comes next after that, but I think starting with the JMT, like, that definitely enters you into the world of through hiking. Folks who have
Yeah.
done the PCT, the AT, the CDT may disagree, but I think you're breaking the barrier of, like, spending an extended amount of time in the wilderness, and, yeah, so I
And
think it's a good foray.
it's always hard to define what a through hike is. Like if I go on a backpacking trip for a weekend, it usually doesn't feel like a through hike. It feels like a backpacking trip. But we just did one this spring in Joshua Tree and we managed to get in the mindset of through hike. It was a weekend. I think it was 2 nights and we were planning on doing it as an out and back. And
Yeah.
halfway through, I think it was Renee, she said,
It was in Joshua Tree National Park, the Joshua Tree Traverse, it's called.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Halfway through, Renee said, "Let's send it." And she meant, "Let's not do out and back, let's do the whole thing," which it was 40 miles or something, so it wasn't huge, but it was then we were in this mindset of, "Okay, we're doing the whole thing, and we'll have to hitchhike back at the end, and this is gonna be" now it's a through hike, which, so no real distance limit, it's just what's your mindset?
Yeah. Yeah. How are you framing it? My understanding is that so much planning goes into doing through hikes. What is y'all's favorite part of planning? And as you've done more, how do you feel like your strategy has evolved?
Yeah, so I think through hikes do not have to be as intensely planned as we plan them. We just really love to dehydrate food and make tasty
Yeah.
meals. I think that is our favorite part of the planning. It's really nice to eat good food out on the trail.
Yeah.
On our first through hike well, for the PCT, the first time we did that, we rented a cabin in Northern Wisconsin for, like, 2 months. So we quit our
Really?
jobs well in advance and rented a cabin and just sort of focused in snowy land of, "Let's dehydrate food and get in the mindset," and that was really fun. So we've tried to do that ever since, and, most of them we have because it wasn't just about oh, we're squeezing and dehydrating after work and in between chores, but like this is what we're focused on. And that really made it part of the trip in a fun way.
Was that your first exposure into dehydrating food, or had you done it before?
No, we'd been dehydrating food for maybe 10 years before that.
No, not
Not
10
10.
before
Okay.
that,
No, you're right.
but a bunch of
5
years,
years.
5 years.
Yeah.
a,
Yeah.
a good amount of time. Just for
Yeah.
like, would you dehydrate food for shorter trips?
Yeah. Our first time dehydrating for a trip was for Isle Royal National Park, doing a few days up there. And
Okay.
it was just, let's see what we can do.
Yeah, we
How
we
do
went with Jim's whole family, and we were like, "We're gonna take on the food and dehydrate food for everyone," and it was fun. It was a big chore, and I don't know if everyone loved the food we made, but
what
Yeah,
did
we
you
made
guys
some
make as your first meal? Or I guess meals for this first endeavor into dehydrating?
one that stands out in my memory from that very first trip was a curry rice, sort of a basmati type dish, and
Uh-huh.
we still make it. I think I have a bag of it nearby. We still make it all the time, and it stands out because we didn't put in meat. We put in cashews, and
Oh,
not
interesting.
everybody in my family was a fan of the meatless approach. We are plant-based eaters now. At the time we weren't. We just thought that would
Yeah.
be a good way to do it.
Well,
Not
isn't it
everybody agreed.
better to dehydrate, like, or to not have super fatty or meat-based foods when you dehydrate?
You can do meat. It's a little harder because yeah, fatty foods don't dehydrate very well.
yeah, so you have to, dehydrate, like, lean meats, maybe, like, chicken. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people do ground beef. If you get all the fat, you buy a lean ground beef and drain the fat, you can dehydrate it. It won't last
Okay.
as long as, I don't know, broccoli, but it lasts.
Huh. Very
And
cool.
our focus for protein out there is beans, nuts, seeds. That's we just make sure we're getting that and we're getting protein.
Do you Are you still always trying to create new recipes, or do you feel like you have a really good recipe bank at the moment?
We always like to create new recipes. I think, yeah, every trip we go on, we try to add some new ones and take away the ones we didn't love the last trip.
Yeah. Do you have a recipe you're most proud of, and then one that you maybe included in the book?
Yeah, peanut butter pasta. I think that's
Oh,
yeah,
I've heard
I'm
you guys
most
talk
proud of
about
that.
that before. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really tasty and it is in our book.
That one was all Renee, I think. You invented that before we did the PCT, and I look at that one as sort of when we really started taking the recipe creation part seriously, and it's so good. So it's everything. It's like one of our first, so it's memorable. It's still one of our best, so it's memorable. It's just so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it just has, noodles, vegetables, and then peanut butter powder and coconut milk powder, some spices. Yeah, it's tasty.
Yum. I'll have to try it. I can't wait. This is something, and you've talked about, like, depending on how you plan your through hike, you don't always have to be walking a marathon every day. But I think a lot of through hikers that I've followed seem to be walking pretty extensive mileage every day. How do you prepare your body for this? And then the other question to that is, how do you prepare mentally to have that much time in your thoughts?
There's a few ways that people prepare their bodies. There's definitely people who train, do weight training. Um, Another way is just to walk a bunch. That's kind of our preferred method.
Yeah.
Another way is to do nothing. And here's the thing, it's maybe 4 to 6 months, 3.5 to 6 months for the really long trails depending on who you are. So, that means the
You just
first
get
month
more fit
can be training,
as you
yeah,
go.
and it's dangerous to do nothing because it can lead to injury. The beginning of any trail, it's surprising how much people get, I don't wanna say competitive, but a little bit, self-conscious about how many miles are they doing each day and what was their start date, because, you meet somebody, you say, "What day did you start?" And if they say a day that is earlier or later than when you started, you can feel like, "Oh, I'm going fast," or, "Oh, I'm going slow." So it can take a little while on the trail for people to overcome that mentality, which makes it hard to say, this is my training time. I'm going to hike lower miles today on purpose because I don't want to get injured. And so lots of
Right.
people do get injured in that first month as their bodies adjust. But if you hold your miles down and build up slowly, that's a fine approach.
Yeah, the I ran a marathon a couple years ago and had to be very intentional about starting the beginning slower. And
Yeah.
like I think it's similar, it's different, but like similar in the idea of like you will burn out or get injured if you get caught up in the excitement at the beginning and go too fast. And
I'm
I
so
like
bad
just
about that on marathons. I'm
yeah,
the worst.
I actually it's like my sister jokes. I have a very good but very slow like internal clock where I literally she's like, "Honestly, you should be a pacer." Like I can just hit the same mileage time. And I don't know
Wow.
how it like always just ends up being the same thing and I'm not trying to do it intentionally, but so who knows, maybe I'll be a pacer someday
That's
for
awesome.
for very slow times.
You can be a
Not
pacer for
fast.
me because yeah, I go too fast at the beginning of every marathon I run.
Yeah, it's hard with the excitement of the marathon and
Yeah,
everyone
yeah, it
yeah.
is. This is jumping back a little bit and then we'll get more into through hiking. But my understanding is you guys lived in Germany and then built an app called One Wanderfreund. I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Yeah, it was
Probably not.
close. Wanderfreund.
Wanderfreund. A Wanderfreund.
Yeah, that was it.
No, thank you. Danke. Isn't that thank you in
Yeah,
German?
dankeschön. Kein Problem. That
um,
means no problem.
yeah. Can you share a little bit about the app that y'all built?
Yeah, so after the Pacific Crest Trail, we just kinda had, after the PCT, we moved to Germany and kinda just were really missing the trail and life on the trail, and so we went on some through hikes on the Germany has a bunch of medium-sized trails, and so we went on these hikes with a friend we met on the PCT who also lived in Germany, like a half hour from us, so that was pretty cool, and we just kind of didn't have the same resources on the German trails that exist on the US trails, so
Mapping resources.
mapping, yep. So the 3 of us just decided, "Okay, maybe we should just build an app." None of us had experience with that, but we figured it out.
And were you doing that was that, like, in tandem with the jobs you were doing at the time and something you were doing on the side?
It was
Yes.
it was COVID. It was a COVID project. Yeah, working at home, we discovered we had a little bit of extra time. You cut out the commute and maybe you cut out a few hours of work here and there, and we just put in,
Yeah.
building an app.
Yeah, you have a little bit more flexibility for sure.
We love
And
that app. We haven't figured out how to make it really take off, but people are using it in Germany on these long trails. It's a useful resource there, and yeah, we'd love to figure out how to bring it to the US.
do you
But
think
it
it
takes a lot of time and
Oh,
which
for
we don't
sure.
have.
Do you think it, like, would be easier not ea I don't know if easier is the right word, but do you find that the challenges that were in Germany in terms of mapping resources are prevalent in other European countries versus like are the mapping resources that you created for the app, do they already exist in the US?
Yes, have you heard of the app Far Out?
I haven't actually.
It's the app for long distance hikes. So on the Pacific Crest Trail and the Continental Divide Trail and the Appalachian Trail and others, it's pretty much 99% of hikers use it because it doesn't just have the route in your phone, but it also has the places you can get water. And
Oh, that's
what else
important.
does it have? Potential campsites, just all of these things that matter when you're doing a marathon a day are in that app. So that's what didn't exist, was something for long distance hiking.
Yep. And so we built, you know, something similar, but with our own version of it. Yeah. Yep. And people can also comment on waypoints to say like, oh, this water source went dry. So
So kind of like Waze in a sense where, I guess Google Maps now owns Waze, but like where it has the feature of like, oh, there's a stalled vehicle above. Like, is it still there? And then you say
Yeah.
yes or no.
Yeah,
yeah.
a lot like that. And we're using it on this current trip, lowest to highest, because it turns out there's no really good mapping app for the route we're doing here. It's a lot of off trail, and you can find a GPS file online, but not a good phone app. So we stuck it into our developer version of Wanderfreund. The app is just for Germany in terms of the public, but for us, we could do whatever we want with it.
Yeah.
And it's really great. So we've been thinking, yeah, for the US too, there's a gap in resources for the trails that aren't the Pacific Crest Trail, but aren't served very well by All Trails or
Right.
Strava. And so our minds spin around there sometimes. What could we do with it to make it
Yeah.
grow here? But we'll see.
And my understanding is you all have connected a trail or built your own through hike recently, right?
Yeah, yeah, the Pacific Northwest Circuit, we call it, which is just a bunch of trails connected or a few trails connected. It's the Pacific Northwest Trail, which goes from the Pacific Ocean to Glacier National Park along the
Mm,
US-Canada border. And then that intersects the Great Divide Trail, which goes along the US or sorry, along the Continental Divide in Canada from the border up to Jasper National Park. And then we created our own connection from partway up the Great Divide Trail to the Columbia River, and we canoed the Columbia River back to the ocean. So nothing in that trail is completely created by us, but by
right.
combining those three, we felt like, well, that needs a name. So
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest Circuit.
But it's use cases like that where maybe your app could also be helpful of, like you said, less popular things that aren't the CDT, the AT, or the PCT, and
Right.
creating those resources for that. So I'm a
For
fan of it.
sure.
I support it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Somebody
Yeah,
did the Pacific Northwest Circuit this year. That was really cool. We did it in
really.
2022, and another group did it this summer, 2024. And hopefully it'll keep taking off because it was really fun to combine hiking and canoeing.
How did you rent a canoe or like drop off a canoe to leave
Yeah,
it
we
at that
we
spot?
we dropped off a canoe. Yep. It was a bit complicated. We kind of called around in the town and said, "Hey, is there any place to leave a canoe?" And they recommended the Facebook group. And so we posted on the
Oh,
Facebook group, "Hey, does anyone have a place we could store our canoe?" And a really nice lady said, "Yeah, put it in my garage for a few months and come
wow,
get it
that's
when
so
you're ready."
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the that's very cool. And it's kind of my understanding is that there's a lot of folks on the PCT, like some trail angels and stuff like that. And so it's kind of you were having to find those original sources for trail angels on your new circuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not positive, but I think the people who did the Pacific Northwest Circuit this year used the same lady and found her on the
That's
same
so
Facebook
cool.
group. So she's definitely Pacific Northwest Circuit trail angel now.
Yeah. You guys have talked about this a little bit when you've done other interviews, but I'd love to hear about how you got interested in posting on social media and stepping into that world of combining, a social media presence with the adventures that you're doing.
Yeah, so it all stemmed from the Wanderfreund app that we were just talking about. We kind of decided, oh, we need to let people know this app exists. And TikTok was just kind of getting big. So we decided that was, we need to make videos and that was the right platform. But
Like marketing videos for the app.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. But we had no idea. what we were doing really with making videos. So we, made an account for Wanderfreund, but then we made a personal account for practice. So we made, a bunch of videos for like 6 months in Germany. And yeah, some of the early ones are pretty bad, but
I mean, our early ones on our personal channel are better than the really funny stuff. If you wanna see some crazy, terrible videos, is search Vonderfreund app's TikTok because they are terrible, but we were figuring it out. I mean, that's the thing
Yeah.
about social media is they say post consistently and you'll have success. I think it's hard to appreciate how much of that post consistently is about training yourself. You're in school for those first 4 months
Yeah.
or 6 months of what does it mean to make an interesting video and tell a good story, and so
Yeah. Especially the tell a good story piece, I think. And then someone was saying, I forget who it was, but it was like there's a period of dissonance when your vision for the video can't match what you actually output. And so that's like frustrating when there's that gap. And then
Mm.
as you put more time into it and practice, the vision you have for the story and the video actually is what is outputted. And that's, much more exciting.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The
So yeah, I think we were posting for about 6 months in Germany. These personal videos, no one cared. They were pretty bad. We came to the US and we're about to hike the Continental Divide Trail, and we posted a video about dehydrating rice, and it got, a million views. And yeah, uh, that's where
this yeah, the
all
start
history
of
from there.
Yeah, it's sort of completely accidental. We had no plans to be, uh, big influencers. We
yeah.
just fell into it, and it's been really rewarding to be able to, share information with people and hear how they're learning about the outdoors from the way we do it, so that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, the what videos do you find typically, I guess, perform best? Is it like your dehydration foods or like do you notice trends or is it kind of all over the board?
There's definitely trends. Usually, food is gonna perform well.
Yeah.
It's people like food, they like all food. Yeah, for somebody who just wants to be an influencer, just go for food.
Yeah.
Everybody likes food. So that one is nice.
Yeah, relatable stuff. So we're out here doing this kind of crazy stuff in most people's minds, but stuff that's relatable, like how to poop on the trail. Like
Yeah.
everyone poops, so they can really relate to
Yeah,
that.
they'd be
Yeah,
like,
body
"Oh."
functions do well. Pooping,
Well, didn't
periods.
you say one
Um,
of the ones that did really I think you said this in an interview. One of the videos that did really well was, like, the controversy that you only brought 1 pair of underwear on the CDT or something
oh
like
yeah.
that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was an early video, and I think that got 25 million views on
Oh my
TikTok
gosh.
right before we left on the Continental Divide Trail, and
Yeah.
people were not happy about the underwear
Wait,
situation.
did you bring 1 change or 1 pair for the whole trip?
I brought one change and one to wear, so sort of alternating. Renee, I
Yeah.
think, brought an extra pair.
Yeah, I kinda like I don't know, I like to, have 2 that I alternate for walking, and then I like a cleaner one that I wear overnight. So
Okay. How do you
so
do
I
you,
always
like,
have 2.
wash it? Or do you literally just alternate?
Ooh,
Mostly just alternate, but whenever we get to a town, we choose underwear that are antimicrobial, so that helps, but, we do laundry occasionally when we get to towns, maybe
really long stretches between towns, we'll sometimes wash them out in stream.
Oh, nice.
yeah, wash them in streams, hang them on our backpack to dry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about I mean, they talk about the engagement piece on social media, and so that I'm sure got lots of comments of people being like, having their own opinions they wanted to share and then just created the cycle effect that made it
Yeah,
get
that was
25
crazy,
million
and that was
views.
early in our experience of having big view videos, and so just I remember going to bed and waking up and like 100,000 new followers, and
Oh my
whoa.
gosh.
It
That's
was
a
this
lot of
perfect storm of, like it came with this really shocking thing, Mexico to Canada, and things to make fun of us for, which is always good for
for
engagement,
yeah.
and also a promise of, like, we are going to do this hike. If you wanna see us finish it, you should watch. If you wanna see us get eaten by a bear, you should watch, like,
Yeah.
whatever's coming, it was so clear that there was something serial, So
Yeah,
so that I think is a big part of why that video converted so much following.
But
yeah,
yes,
for
that
sure.
was people definitely thought we would get eaten by a bear. And yes, that was another big comment. Like the underwear and you're gonna get eaten by a bear.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that must have been it's just yeah, that's interesting. And I guess it got the people interested and then they stuck around. So it worked in a sense. And you're like, look, we
Yeah,
Yep.
didn't get eaten
yeah.
by bears. So look at us.
Yep.
I know you guys have both done, I mean, you've done a lot of through hikes together, but then you've also done some trips individually. I think it was a couple months ago. What is that experience like?
Yeah, I think a lot of people when they're doing through hikes do, kind of do it individual, but some form trail families along the way. But yeah, on my hike this summer, it was fun. I could do what I wanted. I didn't have to, talk with Tim and say, "Hey."
Didn't have to talk with them. I like talking to you.
But I think it's fun to be on my own schedule, but also, it's not as fun when you don't have someone to share the experiences with
Yeah.
and, no one to talk to. Yeah. So there's pros and cons of hiking solo.
Yeah, not this summer, a few weeks ago, so in October, I was in Yosemite for work because I they had the national parks have all these nonprofit partners and they had a big conference in Yosemite that I went to and I was there and I was like, "You know what? I'm here by myself, like I'm going to still go hiking." And I've never done a big hike by myself. I've like done smaller hikes and stuff, but I did the hike to the top of El Cap and then back down and it honestly, it freaked me out, like, being by myself. I was just so in my head of, like, bears, honestly, and I, like, had all the right stuff, but the 2 podcasts that I've been listening to a lot are Tooth and Claw, which is about animal attacks in the wilderness, and
Oh, geez.
Locations Unknown, which is about people going missing in national parks, and so it was just not a good, like, mindset to have as I was hiking by myself for, like, 9 hours. And so it was a big learning lesson for me. I think I can work on kind of like tamping down some of my anxiety in that, but it also made me realize I was like, "You know what? I would actually rather do an easier hike with people than a harder hike by myself." And it kind of came
Mhm.
away with this revelation I felt because I'm always, I want to do the hardest thing, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, actually, I think being with people, dare say, is like more important to me than doing the hardest thing. So it was a learning lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something we learned on the Pacific Crest Trail, our first through hike is, we didn't go out expecting to meet people. We went out like, oh, we're gonna hike alone in the wilderness, but there's other people out there hiking and you make such good friends and some
Hmm.
of those people we met on that first trail have become lifelong friends. So it really, yeah, we realized it is about the community, not yeah, that's a huge part of a through hike and hiking in general.
My friend and I did the TMB, the Tour de Mont Blanc in France, plus Italy and Switzerland a couple like 6 years ago at this point,
That's
and
big.
it
You said
was
you haven't done any big ones. Isn't that's pretty big?
yeah, I guess it is. It was before I
100
even knew
miles or
what through
something?
hikes were, but yeah, I think it's like 120 miles. So I guess I have done a through hike, but it was different in that you stay in like refugios. It's just a different experience because you
Yeah,
stay in
yeah.
like and you have 3-course meals and so it's maybe a more luxurious version. But my friend and I similarly, we did it because we were like, "Oh, we want to do this cool experience." And my favorite takeaway was just the people we met on the trail. And you're meeting people from all over the world. You're sharing meals with people. We were speaking Spanish. You're speaking Spanish with the person at your table with you, but then you're saying thank you in French to the person bringing your food. And like, just, it was amazing. So, yeah, as I've learned more about the PCT and the AT and the CDT, the community piece does seem like it's a really big part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We've talked about you preparing and dehydrating food, but we didn't dig into this. And this is honestly just a curiosity of mine of how do you plan nutritionally for the through hikes? Do you estimate how many calories you're burning each day and try to make sure you're replacing that?
We it sounds more complicated than it is because we don't get all of our food in the mail. We get the good food in the mail. So we're always sending ourselves dinner because that's what we can't get good versions of from small trail towns. We're often sending ourselves fruit because that likewise is hard to get.
Dehydrated fruit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dehydrated fruit, dehydrated veggies, but just
Yeah.
the veggies part. And then when we hit resupply points, so that when the trail goes near a town every 5 to 8 days, sometimes less, sometimes more, we go into town to pick up that mailbox. And every town that has a post office also has at least a gas station, if not a grocery store, where we buy our snacks. So we buy the granola
Okay.
bars there. We buy often instant rice. I mentioned we're sending vegetables. So we'll then take instant rice from the local grocery store, mix it with our
Mm,
vegetables and dehydrated beans and stuff, and make the lunches that way. Our breakfasts, we're usually buying oats and stuff from these stores. So our needs definitely change. Like when it's hot early on in a trail, we often have smaller appetites than like if it's cold later on in the trail and we've already
yeah,
burned all of our fat. And that would be really, really hard to predict with perfection. But by predicting, okay, I'm hungry right now, I'm going to buy more food for the next week. That
right.
works really well.
But kind of like we have like a general rule of thumb that we've figured out kind of works for us is to, eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner like we do at home, and then buy a snack, at least 200 calories per snack for every 5 miles of hike. So that's kind of how
Oh,
we,
so it's
how
kind of
we,
like running where it's like every
yeah.
5 miles you're like, refueling.
Yeah. That rule of thumb is in the book, so I'll just drop that anybody
Look at
like
that.
that kind of advice is definitely in the book too. So yeah, that works really well. Really well, except later in a trail, one snack per 5 miles is not enough. We have no fat left and we spend every minute hungry later in a trail. So
Yeah. Yeah, you're towards the end, you're like, "Okay, I need." And I guess, do you when you go into town, do you, like, intentionally get a super high caloric meal, or is it you're not even intending to, you're literally just hungry and it sounds good?
both. We consider it a chore, a good chore when
Yeah.
we're in a town to, do all of our resupplying for the trail and stuff, but also to eat as many calories as we can. Like,
Yeah.
there's times we're going into town and saying, "Let's see if we can do 8,000 calories
Oh my god.
of, restaurant food, just whatever we can stuff in."
Yeah,
So,
you're like,
Yeah. And
"Milkshake
I,
and pizza and."
yeah. And I have, yeah, there's so many towns I can remember where I just feel sick because I ate too much and I just have to like lay on the ground for a little
Yeah,
bit
just let
because
it
my
pass.
stomach is so full.
It makes me think of it was like the year after Michael Phelps had won his 8 gold medals, and they did this Today Show special on what he ate in a day, and it was crazy. It was, 2 pounds of pasta and a whole pizza, 3 pounds of chicken, just an obscene amount of food.
I yeah, I remember that. Gosh, that was forever ago, but I remember that too, and I believe it. We both used to swim, in theory still swim, but we haven't lately. Swimming burns so many calories because it's not just your legs, it's not just your arms, it's
It's
every
everything.
muscle in your
Yeah.
body, and if you're doing that for however many hours a day he's basically doing a Pacific Crest Trail in the water.
Yeah.
Uh, I can only imagine how many he needs.
Yeah, that actually, because you guys used to do Ironmans, correct? Or have done an
Yeah.
Ironman?
Yeah, we've done one Ironman. Yep. We were big into triathlons for a few years and did an Ironman.
Would you do one again, or do you find, I guess, how does it fall on the scale of challenging athletic activities you've done?
It was challenging. I mean, we were pretty committed for, we kind of built up in doing triathlons for a couple years and then Ironman, we were 6 months of, 2 workouts a day most
Yeah.
days and it was a big time commitment, physical
Yeah.
commitment, but yeah, it was super rewarding to do the Ironman and finish and it was really cool. One of my favorite days I can still think of. But
Yeah,
don't
the
know. I mean, never say never. I don't know if I would do it again, but it was
I
fun.
think on my scale of having done a marathon, I know how much time just that took. And so add the Ironman to it, and I can only imagine when you say it took a lot of time, it's like, yes, I can't imagine.
Yeah. Renee said probably not do it again. Correct me if I'm not speaking for both of us, but I think for me at least, I would do it again. It was fun, but got distracted by all these other fun things. So it's not that
Yeah.
Iron Man was like a one and done. It was just that we've moved on in our current athletic
It
interests.
yeah.
Does that match how you feel?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, lately, we're still into hiking and backpacking and through hiking, but we've also been doing some trail running and
Yeah.
that's kinda cool and a fun kind of more combines the the hiking and the athletics. Yeah, nice to be out on the trails rather than on a road.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue because I actually wanted to ask that of it looks like this year you've had a foray into trail running and how did that get inspired? Or how'd you get inspired to start doing that?
It's pretty common. It's surprisingly common that people finish long trails and then, like, you're just so used to going for a long time, endurance-wise and being outside, that you just wanna keep doing it, and so I think it was the same for us. Is if I could, I would be hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, the Continental Divide Trail every day of my life, but there's various reasons I can't, and so
Yeah.
how do you get that same, fulfillment with with a regular job at the same time and
Yeah.
seeing family sometimes and all of the things that complicate life. And one way to
Yeah.
do it is to, as often as possible, do just trail running
Trail
and get in
runs.
that mindset.
Yeah, and I think it helped. We moved recently from Germany to California and reconnected with one of our friends from the Pacific Crest Trail. And, yeah, the Pacific Crest Trail is bringing us friends all around the world. Whenever we
Yeah.
move somewhere, there's always
Yeah, you're like,
someone.
"Oh, we have another." I mean, California makes sense that there would be
Yeah,
friends from the PCT.
Yeah,
yeah,
they're everywhere. It's crazy. You meet these people and then, like, our global network is all PCT.
That's
but
awesome.
yeah. Anyways,
S
yeah, we met him, and then he was, yeah, we just kind of got into trail running with him. He was showing us all these new trails around the area, and we all decided to sign up for a 50K together. And yeah,
yeah.
it's fun.
How do you find training and planning for a trail run different than a through hike?
Like, infinitely. I think training for a trail run is a lot like training for a marathon. It's,
Yeah.
you're getting your body ready and doing runs. You don't have the complications of what are my resupplies going to be? What gear do I need? You need shoes. So, I, yeah, we just said how similar they are, but I guess in terms of prep and gear, they're they're really different.
Well, food-wise also, you're more so just doing, like, how you would refuel on a marathon, right?
Yeah, yep.
Not quite. I mean, yeah, more that style. The difference for trail running is people eat whatever. Like,
Okay,
the
that's
aid
what I've heard.
stations.
People are like, "I'm
Yeah.
eating like a burrito in the middle of my
Uh-huh.
run." And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, I thought I loved that. On our 100K we did this year, so 62 miles of running, I was so pumped to
Wow.
just run the whole thing, eat burritos. They had so much good food, and then I it just, like, cramped and stopped eating, and then I bonked,
Oh,
and so it didn't work for me that well, actually, and the
yeah.
next race we did, I switched to liquid fuel. So, Scratch Labs has some, they call it super high carb drink powder, and you could get 400 calories in a water bottle, and
No
it's
way.
carbs, so it's like it fills you. So on the next one, I went to 100% liquid, more like a
Yeah.
marathon would be, and it was great. That's how I'm gonna do it from now on.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, even when you're training for a marathon, you have to figure out part of the training process is literally figuring out what fuel sits with you. And I remember the waffle, what are they called?
Stroop waffles,
The
man,
Yes,
those are
the
good.
Stroop waffles. They're so good, but they made me salivate like way too much. And
Oh.
so I would need to drink so much water after eating it. In my little water supply pack, it just wasn't sustainable. Maybe in a marathon, it is a little bit more because you can get refill water, but it literally would make me want to drink 3 glasses of water. And so I was like, okay,
Wow.
I don't know why, but so I loved eating them, but it wasn't sustainable for the marathon itself.
Mhm.
Yep, yep. And I mean, the gel packets, I can't do those. They just go right through me, and I'm running to the porta potty.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, you learn those things, you know?
yeah.
As we wrap up our time, one thing I do want to talk about is you guys, we've referred to the book a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about what inspired you to write a book and how that process of I think something I really admire about you guys and one of my favorite things to do is take on something crazy and figure out how to make it happen. And I feel like that is the undercurrent of how you guys operate of, okay, what's this crazy new thing and how can we make it happen? And it's like, I don't know how to write a book, but let's figure it out. Or I don't know how to build an app, but let's figure it out. And so I really love that about y'all's story. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your book writing process.
Yeah, it was, yeah, I never really imagined I'd be writing a book. But a a publishing company, DK, which is part of Penguin Random House, reached out to us and said, "Hey, we think you could write a good book about backpacking." And so we said, "Oh, yeah, maybe we can."
Sure.
And so yeah, it's a guide and a guide for backpacking. Kind of has 3 parts: before the trail, like how to prep and all the gear you need, and then on the trail, what to expect, and then the 3rd part is recipes. So it was a really cool process to write it. And we had an editor, and she was great. She really kept us on track and gave us deadlines for when to write things. and
That's good.
but yeah, it was a lot of work, but
Yeah, I think in terms of actually getting it done and being able to be authors, it was our editor. She was just so great to work with and so supportive and so helpful when we had questions, and she gave us a deadline, and she didn't hold us to it, but she said like actually we gave her a deadline. She
Yeah.
said, "You guys give me your targeted deadlines," and that really worked. We wrote an outline and we said, "We'll write this part this day and this part this day." And by going back and forth, we felt like we had somebody to not to let down, and
Yeah.
it was great. It was a fun experience, and it's been cool to see the reaction to it. People are reading it, which
That's
is
awesome.
which is weird. It's one thing for someone to spend 30 seconds on your video when it pops up in front of them on their phone. But for someone to go to the store or come to a book signing is such a it's still kind of surreal to realize that people are appreciating the stuff so much that they'll pay money for it or they'll
Yeah.
come listen to us talk about it. It's crazy.
Yeah, this is more random, but over Thanksgiving, my dad was on, I think, I don't know, Instagram or TikTok or something. I don't know which one he has, but he has one of them. And it was on sound. And all of a sudden I heard y'all's voice. And I was like, wait, I think that's Renee and Tit. I was like, Dad, is that Thruhikers? And he was like, I don't know. It just popped up on my feed. Like, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I'm interviewing, I'm interviewing them next week. He was like, oh, okay. And I was like, that's so cool.
Somebody tagged us a few years ago of a student getting scolded in class for TikToking, and it was one of our videos, and so like in the comments they said, "Oh, he's watching through hikers when he should be," or maybe they even said like he's learning more from through hikers than he would from the
That
teacher,
he is in
something like that.
class.
So
Oh, that's funny. Well, as we wrap up our time, I guess a way, we didn't talk too much about national parks. I think just following where the conversation goes. But what's your favorite national park you've hiked through as our final kind of wrap up question?
I I'm gonna throw a curveball compared to what I would have said a week ago.
Ooh,
I don't want to be married to this answer, but right now, my favorite is Death Valley. We just walked it.
wow.
It was so cool. It was just empty and diverse, and it blew my mind how much I liked it. I think it might be one of the most underrated national parks. We've been there
Heck yeah.
previously by car, and you just drive and drive and drive. 2 hours to go one place, 2 hours to go another place. But
Yeah.
when you take out the car and start walking, you realize that those big gaps are really awesome places that you can enjoy in between. So yeah, I know what Renee's gonna say, so she can
well,
go
yeah,
next.
I already said it, but yeah, Kings Canyon and Sequoia.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of a secondary. I really like the parks that are more wilderness areas. So another
Yeah.
one that comes to mind is North Cascades National Park in
Yes.
Washington.
I love North Cascades.
Yes. You have to get the weather right so you're not stuck in rain, but if you
Yeah.
can get that piece of it correct,
Have we ever gotten that piece of it correct?
maybe not,
That's why she
but
loves it. It's the challenge that comes with it. The
mhm.
I filmed a documentary in the North Cascades, or it's something I'm working on with the chief of facilities of the North Cascades. And it's kind of the story of Bill, the chief of facilities, and how his story emulates the story of the national parks or of the North Cascades and the National Park Service. And we got literally perfect weather and got to spend 3 days there. And it was amazing. So hopefully I'm not misrepresenting the North Cascades when I release the documentary because everyone's like, "Oh, the weather's so perfect. There's not a cloud in the sky." And it's like, well,
Wow.
actually,
The
that's
the
not
other thing on
truthful.
national parks that I thought would come up, but didn't, but I wanna fit it in before we end, is that they are so good for so many people, and that's just, like, such a great thing about them. I grew up going to national parks. It's why I love the outdoors the way I do. At the same time, they are limited compared to the nature you can get in the borders, in the Forest Service areas
Yeah.
or BLM land surrounding them. So we often are going through national parks. There's so many cars, there's so many people, and thinking like, man, this is detracting from the wilderness. But then we realize actually it's improving the wilderness everywhere
Mhm.
by showing people how great the wilderness is
Yeah.
or how great it can be in an accessible way that you can get to from your car, that you don't have to be a super athlete to see. So we love them.
Yeah. Yeah, so do I. My one of my favorite interviews thus far was with the Grand Teton superintendent, Chip Jenkins, and he said that creating memories is an act of preservation because when you are going there and you're experiencing it and understanding the value that it brings to you and to other people, like you are becoming or forming the opinions that then could make you a steward and want to preserve the place. And so I totally agree. The fact that they are accessible enables people to learn to care about them. And then there are so many opportunities to jump off. Like you just literally go 2 miles off the road and you're like in great wilderness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I like that phrase that memories is an act of preservation because in a lot of ways we think of our videos that way. We usually aren't saying save the wilderness, fight for the turtles, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We're saying
Don't
like
use
this is how
straws.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But we're saying this is how fun it can be, and we're
Yeah.
trying to say it to everybody, and we hope that that is a message that people are realizing that this is amazing and this is fun, and I want to get out there. And even without explicitly telling people to donate to land preservation, we suspect that we're making an impact on land
Yeah.
preservation and making more wild, awesome areas out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Well, with that, thank you so much, Renee and Tim. It's been a pleasure. And I'm excited to just continue and follow the adventures that you guys come up with and execute on. And thank you for taking us along the journey.
Thank you, Maddie. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks a
Yeah.
ton.
Yeah. Good luck with, how far you can get up Mount Whitney.
Let's see if we can make the
Maybe
top.
the top. Dare we
Yeah.
say?
We're not getting summit fever. No.
No.
Be safe.
Safely get to the top
Yeah.
if the conditions allow.
Yes.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening today. If you like this podcast, please share the word. Who Runs This Park's success relies on you rating, reviewing, and sharing the word about the podcast with your friends. If you have an idea for someone you want me to interview for this new segment, send me an email at maddie@whorunsThispark.com or DM me on Instagram @whorunsThispark, and we'll make it happen. Thanks again. So thankful for listeners like you. See you next week.